Washington, former Mayor Michael R. Bloomberg of New York has qualified for Wednesday's debate in Las Vegas, the first time the billionaire will appear on stage alongside his Democratic presidential rivals. A national poll from NPR, PBS NewsHour, and Marist released on Tuesday showed Mr. Bloomberg with 19% support among Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents, putting him in second place behind Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, who had 31%. That was a substantial surge since the group's poll in December, when Mr. Bloomberg received only 4% support. The survey was the fourth national qualifying poll since mid-January that showed Mr. Bloomberg with at least 10% support, enough to earn him an invitation to the debate stage before the deadline of 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday. Mr. Bloomberg will face off against Mr. Sanders, Senators Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts and as varied as socks and laptop computers. And Chinese consumers, who had ridden a wave of rising wealth, had been avid buyers of luxury goods, iPhones, and many other items. Fears over the coronavirus's impact on the global economy and business have been growing. As of Tuesday morning in China, more than 72,000 people had been infected by the coronavirus and over 1,800 had died worldwide, officials reported. About 750 million people in China are under some kind of lockdown orders, according to a New York Times analysis. A police action on Monday is the first of many we're going to see around the coronavirus impact, said Daniel Ives, managing director of equity research at Wedbush Securities. Apple is heavily exposed. It confirms the worst fears that the iPhone impact was going to be more dramatic than expected. Updated February 10, 2020. Shares in Apple were trading about 3.2% lower in pre-market trading on Tuesday. Apple, which is widely regarded as a bellwether of its philosophy, is simple: I try to make something special out of any girl who wants to give rowing a shot, he said. The question is, does that amount to extraordinary ability? In the 3 years since receiving a work visa, Mr. Mata has crafted a program of dedicated rowers who have competed in the U.S. Rowing Youth Nationals, the highest level for high school rowers, and won college scholarships. But Mr. Mata does not just coach. A nutritionist by training, he instructs his athletes to maintain a balanced diet. No processed food before races. Stick to fruit for energy and coconut water for hydration. Mr. Mata urges his rowers to spend time on their studies and think about futures that can be full of possibilities. We don't just focus on rowing performance, we're developing student athletes, said Mr. Mata, standing in parking lot 77 at Marina del Rey in West Los Angeles, where the team assembles 6 days a week to train, rain or shine. A small rowing program supported by private donations, RowLA cannot be compared to many of the well-endowed, elite teams around the country, some of which have been in existence for a century. The program lacks a boathouse. RowLA's 17 sculls, rowing machines and other equipment sit in the parking lot, protected by tarps. What Haku does is extraordinary, said Iva Obradovic, a veteran rowing coach and former competitive rower. He's competing against rich, private teams. Hardly any coach would do it. He won't get praise and glory for it. The makeup of RowLA's athletes says everything about Mr. Mata's coaching philosophy, Ms. Obradovic said. These girls are not typical rowers, but they show up, they have discipline, and they do the work. When RowLA sponsored Mr. Mata for a temporary work visa in 2017, his 250-page petition documented more than 2 decades of success as a rower and coach. There were letters from senior Brazilian rowing officials, endorsements from rowing coaches and athletes from several countries, and a detailed list of his accolades, more than 20 Brazilian championship titles in several categories. The visa was approved in a week. Everybody had said it was so complicated. I was thrilled, Mr. Mata recalled. The visa enabled his wife, Emmanuelle Manu Abro, a competitive rower in Brazil, to join him in the United States, where she has been training and volunteering with RowLA. Once taking the helm, Mr. Mata began building up RowLA. He established a development program for middle school girls and expanded the reach of the organization's indoor rowing program, from 2 to 8 schools in the Los Angeles area, serving more than 4,000 students each year. In early 2019, Row LA decided to sponsor Mr. Mata for a green card, or permanent legal residency in the United States. In the 300-page application, Ms. Greenberger described Mr. Mata as an invaluable asset to Row LA. Rob Glidden, president of the Long Beach Rowing Association, credited Mr. Mata's training methods, nutrition counseling, and personal qualities for creating an outstanding program to develop rowers. "The confidence he inspires in these kids is palpable," Mr. Glidden wrote, saying it had enabled many of them to achieve both academic and athletic success that would not otherwise have been possible. But the government responded with a request for further evidence to prove that Mr. Mata was extraordinary. His lawyer, Richard Wilner, submitted an additional 150 pages of documents, only to receive a denial in August. In a 5-page letter, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services Agency, which is responsible for approving residence permits, outlined reasons why Mr. Mata did not meet the criteria for someone with extraordinary ability. The agency's decision referenced a training handbook developed by Mr. Mata for Row LA, which it conceded was an original contribution, but it said he had offered no objective evidence that this innovation is being widely utilized by others in the field beyond his employer, clients, or customers. Mr. Mata also had not proved that he performed in a leading or critical role for organizations or establishments that have a distinguished reputation, the rejection said. What stung the most, it said that the evidence did not show that Mr. Mata had received a major, internationally recognized prize or award for his team. As a competitive athlete and coach, Mr. Mata said, he obviously wants to win. But maybe, he said, victories should not be counted by medals alone. At other clubs, it's all about performance. The objective here is to get the girls on the right path, into college, he said. Rowing is a tool. Mr. Wilner said the government is using the wrong yardstick. Perhaps we need to assess his extraordinary ability as a coach with one additional measure of success not contemplated by the regulations, he said. It's that he's helping these girls win in life, be the first in their family to go to college, not just win medals. A spokesman for Citizenship and Immigration Services said the agency could not comment on individual cases. There is an extremely high eligibility threshold that must be met to receive this visa, he said. Of roughly 1.1 million green cards issued in the 2018 fiscal year, about 39,500 people obtained them under the extraordinary ability category, according to the government, a figure that includes spouses and children of the applicant. Mr. Wilner has appealed the green card denial, and the legal bills are mounting, totaling more than $15,000 so far. Row LA also applied for an extension on his original guest worker visa, which expired officially on Friday, for another 3 years. Rather than grant a renewal, immigration authorities earlier this month requested that Mr. Mata submit further evidence of his extraordinary ability. He is permitted to remain in the country and continue coaching until a final decision is made on either application. So that is what he is doing. Against the din of squawking seagulls on a recent Sunday, Mr. Mata stood in a motorboat in the marina and coached the team through their strokes. Oars parallel. Attention to the catch, he called over a walkie-talkie. In perfect synchrony, the girls dipped their blades into the water and propelled their boats forward.